Hello there. If you're watching this, then congratulations. You are either a new junior game master, or you want to spend several minutes listening to RMC-14's Game Master process. Either way, welcome. This is going to be a cradle-to-grave rundown on the process of writing a script application, submitting said application, running your event, and other important pieces of info. We'll also toss in running in your own RMC-14 dev environment for funsies, so you could test out some of these commands and maybe try your hand at mapping. This guide was made primarily through my own experience with getting my own script approved and run. It also references commands and materials composed by RMC-14's more experienced game masters. I extend thanks to making these, as they're a big reason why this video is even possible. It'll also be linked in the description for your reference. So, first, let's go over what a script is. A script is a document that outlines a framework for how your event will be structured. It should cover all the important portions of your event, such as where it takes place, who will be the main participants, if there's any combat in the first place, and if there is combat, what they'll be fighting. Some scripts are compact enough to fit onto single Discord messages, but more complex ones will take up several pages. You should try to compose your scripts into a document file or a PDF for submission. But first, let's start with the primer for your script. A primer should outline to the public the basics of your event and try to drip feed at least a little bit of flavor and maybe even intrigue. Some primers are just text, but others include images. I myself used a video for my primer. A primer should ideally catch the eye of a prospective player and encourage them to show up to the event. Accompanying your primer, though, must be some essential pieces of information which must be disclosed for your event to be run. These are as follows. Is there any human versus human combat in your event, especially it's the main core of it? Is this not actually PvE, i.e., will your event use Xeno AI, or when we get it, human AI? Is this a first contact round, i.e., when your faction arrives, are they going to know what a Xeno is? Is there anything wacky or non-standard? You're able to be vague, but if your operation breaks the mold, you should say so. Is your operation a meme operation? This, of course, doesn't mean that it's an automatically low roleplay, to clarify. Is your operation slow burn, i.e., will it take a little bit of time for the real meat of it or the combat to arrive? Is your operation RP based, i.e., will the focus of your operation be talking rather than combat? Is your operation using non-standard spawning, i.e., if somebody joins, are you going to ash or kill them? Is your operation a green shift, where no violence happens, a blue shift, where violence might happen, a colony fall, where your map starts off as normal but progressively falls to a hostile force, or an isolation round, where survivors face off against a Game Master-controlled Xeno? And finally, is your operation a rerun, which is self-explanatory. Aside from the essentials which your primer must cover, I highly recommend informing players of the map being used, what kind of characters you should bring to an operation, and when you compose the primer, you should try and write it in such a manner that sets a tone for the rest of the operation. A serious-sounding primer will lead players to being more inclined to sort of play things straight. A primer that emphasizes the nonsensicality of your script, such as delivering a pizza to an active war zone, will compel players to expect laughs. Remember, you're writing a story here, and, of course, the medium of storytelling is all about presentation. Now, back to script writing. As a simple matter, your script doesn't need to be earth-shattering or excessively complicated. It's perfectly fine for your script to be relatively standard. Lots of operations that have been considered good quality are often fairly interchangeable in terms of premise. Just take a look at all the reruns or operations where Marines show up just to get their teeth kicked in by Xenos. That being said, I feel it's usually nice to try and implement at least one bit of flavor into your operation. For example, switching up the combatants could go a long way to making your event more interesting. Giving players extra gear that they might not get to use in PvP or PvE is also interesting, another light twist. Stepping it up a bit, you could try to integrate atypical objectives. Maybe the Marines need to escort a nuke to a bomb site or protect a VIP through a gauntlet of Xenos. Putting a limit on your experimentation, though, is important, as it's incredibly easy to get overwhelmed when you actually start trying to run your script, especially if you're unfamiliar with the tools needed to GM around. As some extra information when cooking your PvE script, PvE already has some renovated versions of maps which lack the damage that their typical counterparts have, and there's precedent for custom PvE maps. Just take a look at Corsat, which was a map dedicated to PvE. Your script also benefits. Hey all, editor note, I'm jamming this in last minute. In this section, I mentioned a few things like having a timeline for your script, and they might have sounded optional. Upon review by the GMs, it turns out it is in fact not. You should try to have a timeline of events in your script, as well as a list of potential issues with it. They will probably also inform you of this requirement when you submit your script, and in general, if your script is accepted, they won't leave you fully in the dark. There will be more of these clarifications, so I'm sorry if this bugs the flow of the video up. It's from having a timetable of events, which will help GMs gauge how far along your operation has come. Pre-writing some important information, such as individual primers or announcements, is also greatly useful. In a similar vein, setting up a section where you assess potential risks or problems of your script is important so that you can patch them up before the round starts, rather than on the fly. Once you've written your script, you can move on to the submission process. For new game masters, you need to submit scripts via the ticket process on the RMC official Discord. Hey all, this is an editor note from after review. I wanted to doubly emphasize, as of making this video, new applications are closed. You could write a script, but you should not submit it until submissions open up again. Word is this probably won't happen for a while. So please, just wait for the submissions to be open before you actually submit your script. First, go to the staff messages. Here you're able to start a ticket. Reading the info blurb is also advised. This will clarify if game masters are accepting new PvE tickets. As of writing this script, PvE tickets are closed due to the sheer quantity of tickets open. Game masters should also familiarize themselves with RMC's lore, which can be found on the wiki, which I will link below. Once you've submitted your script, the waiting process begins. Game masters, contrary to popular belief, are human beings with livelihoods. This means that they aren't dedicated to reviewing scripts 24/7, and as a result, you should be fully prepared for your script to be in a graveyard for weeks and even months. Remember though, patience is a virtue. Eventually, after waiting long enough, your script can be picked up by a game master. Game masters will then usually provide some suggestions and revisions for your script. These could range from minor clarifications to completely changing the map your script will be run on. Always be ready to revise your script. Nothing is set in stone until you actually implement it in a round. After a satisfactory reviewing period, and when a time slot is good for both you and your reviewing game master, you can finally run your script. A primer is going to be pushed out to the public, and they'll inform you that you're running a script and it's about to be torn to shreds when it makes touchdown. You'll get GM perms for Normandy at an indeterminate time, which will allow you to join the server and prepare some basics, like uploading your music. Good segue. How do Game Master commands work? Testing some of these requires a dev environment, which sounds much more complicated than it is actually. This is a word salad rephrasing Slopper's guide, or at least I think it's Slopper's. First, you need to download these things. I'm going to assume you know how to operate an installer, so links will be in the description. After all of these are installed, go to the top left of the GitHub desktop, click File, then Clone Repository, and paste the GitHub link to RMC-14. After that, you wait for it to download all of the needed files. GitHub should then give you the option to review the repository in your files. When you're here, click Run This, Run Server, and then Run Client. In my experience, this took a second try, but it's relatively simple. Now that you're in your own personal hell chamber, you could start practicing your admin abuse. But before that, let's start another clarification. Lots of the tools that game masters use won't be accessible here. Those are stored in a location that I am unaware of and frankly believe I cannot disclose. Some of these relevant commands are in the RMC-14 Game Master Guide. The biggest one that I'll mention is /Gamemaster, which gives you a big UI for setting things up like announcements. It would have been useful if I found out about that earlier in my first round, but that's my fault for not reading it. First, typing /aghost in the chat will admin ghost you, which makes you a special ghost capable of doing all sorts of zany crap. This command, as well as other commands, can also be accessed via the in-game console by pressing tilde. Tilde is actually better for using commands, because that's the actual intended console. Right-clicking on other ghosts will give you a lot of your tools. The most important one is in admins, which is spawn here as job. This is one of the main ways that people get spawned in rounds where unconventional spawns are used. The other way involves toolshed commands. Let's go over one that's supposedly very simple: uploading audio files. Uploading audio files makes me want to kill myself. To start, press tilde, the button on the top left of your keyboard, right next to the little one, to open your console. With this open, you could copy and paste the command from the GM guides, or anywhere else where you have them. Upload file spacebar dash filename.ogg. After that, you just replace file name with the exact name of the file you want to upload. For your own sanity, I recommend just doing that whenever you want to upload music. Alternatively, type upload file space dash the name of your file .ogg. You also want to make sure that your file is actually readable, which means decimating any spacebars or other characters that the console doesn't recognize as human. After you've uploaded your file, be it a music or an alarm or death screams, it's time to play it. Another editor note. The other game masters clarified that you don't actually need to put in the exact same name as your file that you are using when you upload your file. It's just dictating what the file is named when you do upload it. So you could have a file named Nixon_concerto, and then when you upload it, you could just call it Nixon's. And then when you want to play it as a global sound, you just call on Nixon's instead of Nixon's concerto. Play global sound, again, does not care about the name of the file on your PC. It only cares about the exact name of the file as it's uploaded. So in a hypothetical situation, you upload a file that's a different name than what you got on the computer. You try to use the file name as it is on your computer, but because it's trying to read what you uploaded instead of what you have on your computer, it's not going to work. I wish this crap was as simple as uploading MIDI files. This is the command to play your music at an average volume. It'll make sure that everybody on the server can hear it at a reasonable level, which won't blur out their eardrums. Make sure, though, that the U inside uploaded is capitalized. If it's working right, you'll be able to see the files you uploaded. Doubly make sure, though, that your file name matches exactly, or it won't play. This includes things like capitalizations. You can also play several audio files at the same time, such as the sounds of a protest gone bad in conjunction with some tone-deaf guitars. Let's go over a few other tools in your tool belt. Pressing B gives you your sandbox menu, something that you might be well acquainted with if you've ever mapped, adminned, or messed around on a sandbox server. The most relevant things here are spawn tiles, which could be used to change floors, spawn entities, which could be used for anything from spawning xenos, loot, or mapping, and there's also the decal menu, which sits in the corner while its siblings get all of the fun. The F7 menu is also useful, letting you teleport around like a scuffed Dr. Manhattan. Subtle whispering is also another tool that I recommend, with it being useful to say, "Please get out of here before I gibstick you right now." It's also useful for less violent flavor, such as describing when something invisible, such as, say, odor or heat in a room, hits a player. I like to use sigil messages as well to silently seed optional RP prompts into the wider population when they're getting bored. As another reminder, a lot of the GM tools are isolated to Normandy, which means I can't really show them off. Just know, though, that the Gamemaster tools are fairly robust, allowing you to spit out announcements or set the round end screen without needing to work with the horror that is the toolshed. If you have any questions, try to ask your local Gamemaster about them. As for the experience of running your first round, you want to make sure that you're in a good mental and physical state. It would have helped a lot if I better attended to my physical needs before, running my first round, such as taking a nap, packing some extra food to keep my mental going, and as a GM, you might be attending to the clashing needs of over 70 people or more. The pressure only grows more apparent when you actually see it up close. It's important to stay calm and to try and work with other game masters who are helping you run your operation. In my experience, they're always greatly helpful, and they practically hard carried me throughout my entire first operation. You should also make sure to pelt a healthy amount of questions in their direction before the round starts, so you're better equipped when it actually does start. When the round is through, you also want to make sure to take out your notepad. Another clarification. Game Masters are going to be giving you direct feedback about your round after you run it, especially if you don't want to, take on the task of going to PvE General after a round, especially if things got pretty hairy. As another note, Game Masters aren't, in their own words, going to leave you in the dust. They're going to be asking you questions, they're going to be trying their best to help you, so just keep that in mind whenever you're either in your process or thinking about it. If this operation went well, you might be able to pin Junior Game Master to your list of achievements, which means for future scripts, you want to soak up plenty of field notes from people who actually played through and experienced your script. I found that PvE players usually give good faith criticism. You want to make good scripts, they want to play fun rounds, having a healthy discussion about the successes and failures about your round is the best path for your improvement. For an example of a note, my first round had a major note, which was that the atmosphere was good, but the SPP lacked objectives or things to do. While I did plan for the SPP to have an entire system of objectives that round, I didn't get to implement them properly due to being stretched thin. With this in mind, better establishing faction goals for green and blue shifts so that they aren't left wandering around is an important task for future scripts, and it could be achieved by better utilizing the Game Master's integrated announcement system or by briefing players before a round starts with their objectives. With that, we've covered most of the things which I think you should know when game mastering initially. Inevitably, I'm going to miss something, so if you have any field notes about this video or ways to improve it, I'll happily accept your criticism. As always, I hope you have a good day, stay safe, and happy script writing for those who dare. Happy hunting, Marines.